Cinco de Mayo. I've got a marg. You've got what?
This is Patron.
Nice.
I'm going to butcher
Reposado?
this. Reposado. Thank you for making that less embarrassing.
Nice. I love it. I respect. Okay. So when you were like, I'm going to be eating tequila straight, not eating tequila straight. You don't eat tequila. I'm going to be drinking tequila straight. I was scared that you were going to come on here with some Blanco ass shit and just be dying.
Like Jose Cuervo.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, no, actually, I took my first sip of this and I thought it was going to be like, man, I better get ready. Some hair on my chest, but it's actually really smooth. It's not bad at all.
Honestly, dude, Patron Reposado. Holy shit, I want a podcast and I'm eating. Of all the times to be eating, I just have this salty dark chocolate and I can't wait any longer.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not a fan of dark chocolate. Sorry. For whatever reason, it kind of tastes like dirt,
What? Okay. Sorry, we're going to fight. This is not an opinion that you're allowed to have.
It's too potent for me. It's like overwhelming. I need the milk to like water it down, like dilute it.
It's literally, this debate is literally like Scotch versus whiskey. You know what I mean?
I disagree. I mean, like I can appreciate all the flavors in Scotch, but the reason is because they're bitter flavors. With chocolate, it's like an overwhelming, like sweet. I don't like that. I don't know.
Oh, dude, milk chocolate is literally sweeter than dark chocolate.
I don't know about that. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it to me. And actually, that's part of the reason I'm not having margaritas either. I learned this on my cruise, man, because I hardly ever drink or eat sugar, like just in general. Yeah. And when I had the unlimited drink package, and I was like, to make this worth the money, I have to get the fanciest drinks possible. And I was drinking straight sugar the whole time. I gained 11 pounds on that cruise. Horrible. I'm never doing that again. Like I will definitely be drinking it straight up, and they barely give you any fucking alcohol in it.
Yeah, dude. There's like nothing there. You have to try so hard to get that liquor.
Yeah.
It literally, beer is more alcoholic at that point.
Yeah.
Dude, I just got back home from playing a music festival in Florida, and I swear to God, I came home I like 8 pounds heavier, and it was like a week.
Oh yeah, like that's nuts. That's like unheard of.
Yeah, it's bad.
I mean, the only good thing was, I lost it so easily. Like after like 2 weeks of working out and not eating and drinking like that, it was like gone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a lot of it's water weight and like the sugar. Listen, if you're like hydrating well, you can lose weight fast. You just gotta like hydrate well, cut back a little. Be a man because we have superior genetics.
Oh my God. Yeah, you mean metabolically speaking.
Yeah, I'm metabolically speaking.
Not from like a weird eugenics take there.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely a eugenicist.
Uh-huh.
I think that we should like figure out how to make men have babies so that like men can procreate, and then just have like a bunch of men in the world. I think that's probably.
So when Huffy is rich and famous someday, just take that clip out of context, and that'll be the end of his life. And that's pretty much all there is to it.
That's the end of it. By the way, I feel really bad for everybody listening to this because they can't see just like your immaculate face,
dude.
Like here I am on a webcam, and Vince is sitting here on like I don't know, like $1,300 of like fucking camera, just glowing.
It's funny. I did an interview for a promotion with the camera and the audio setup and everything.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was pretty funny because I was like, it's a Zoom interview. This is probably gonna knock their socks off because they're used to people using the crappiest equipment. They didn't say a word about it. I was like, there's no way that like they did not notice what was happening here.
Wait, what was it an interview for?
The job that I ended up getting. I'm an assistant clinical coordinator at a mobile intensive care unit department. I won't get too into the weeds with that, like from a medical perspective. It is cool, yeah.
So do you consider yourself a frontline worker?
Well, I am, yeah. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a paramedic, so I respond to 911 calls, and I mean, what that job entails is, like, a lot of people don't really know the finer ins and outs of it, but it's complicated, like, on a state-by-state basis. Yeah. So I don't know. I get weird about this question, because it's like, it means a different thing in every state, sort of thing, and people don't really care that much. So I don't know.
I care.
Yeah.
I think it's super fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're familiar with like medical procedures, it's like basically we have a two-tiered system here in New Jersey where I live, where if it's something not too acute, they'll send EMTs. If somebody like broke their wrist or their ankle or, something that's not a big deal or life-threatening, then they'll just send EMTs. And then if it's life-threatening or they think there's a potential that it could be life-threatening, they'll send us, and we have advanced equipment, cardiac monitors, intubation equipment, all that kind of stuff that we can bring right to people's house to sort of bring like most of the ins and outs of an ER,
Wait, this is I've known you for years, and this is maybe like the most detailed explanation.
Well, dude, I always feel like I don't like like mansplaining this to people, because people really don't give a shit. Like, I've run into people all the time. Oh,
why?
I'm telling you, it's weird. It's like, oh, you drive the ambulance? No. Like that is like what I get all the time. Oh, so you drive the ambulance? Like, no. I mean, that's like a very small part of the job, and it's like I technically am not even in an ambulance, actually. We're in chase vehicles, which are Suburbans, but like that's like a minor detail that go through all that is just like, it's almost not even worth it in most cases.
Wait, okay, so you're in a Suburban, that's packed with like an ER in the back of it,
right? And then basically we carry it all into the back of somebody else's ambulance and take care of patients, or into somebody's house.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like, what's some of this equipment like? I mean, listen, my knowledge of this world comes from like fucking ER with George Clooney,
right?
And like Grey's Anatomy, and I've seen like guys like sticking straws into people's necks, and like I have no idea what this world actually looks like.
Well, so first of all, I would say neither of those shows are medically accurate to even what happens in an ER.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have that kind of stuff. At like, not a straw. We have actual equipment for that. It's called a Crike kit, and it's basically a commercial device where if there was an obstruction stopping you from being able to intubate somebody through their mouth, then you could cut a small incision into their neck. I've never done that. We have it. It's a really rare thing that happens, but we train to do that in the event of a situation, where it's like an anaphylactic reaction, their airway swells up, or a food bolus that gets stuck in their airway. There's a couple things that cause that most frequently, but it's a really rare thing.
Yeah. So you're telling me there's not like a bunch of McDonald's to-go straws like in a cup holder that you just like shove?
No. No. There's actually a movie called The Heat with Sandra Bullock. Have you ever seen that? Yes. And she does that, exactly what you're talking about. And Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was like.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I'm in awe of this whole thing. So do you, I mean, I guess at this point you're like super fucking calm in those situations, because you have to be.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, look, there's stuff that happens that shakes us, but it's usually not something like you would think of. Like, so most people would say, oh, it must be hard seeing like blood and guts on like a motor vehicle accident or something like that. That's not something I worry about at all. That really doesn't bother me. And that's not just me being like hard or anything. That's just pretty normal. But like anything involving sick or injured children, that tends to bother people, like regardless of their experience and status in their career, So that's the type of thing that is the tougher part of the job.
For sure.
I feel like this is turning into like a weird interview about me.
No, I really love this. Like, I mean, I'm super interested, especially, with like the last year that we've been to.
Oh yeah. So that's changed a lot of what we do. Like, now I have to wear this like respirator pretty much like on every call. it's super
Yeah.
weird. And when I talk to families, I have to be like, "We're taking him to a hospital. You're not allowed to come." You know, it's really it's so bizarre. And then
Oh.
when we go to call the doctor, I have to like step outside and like take like the mask completely off. Otherwise, they can't hear me over the phone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But my new job, like I'm still doing that a few days a week, but I'm also in the office now and actually setting clinical policy and like sort of dictating how we administer care, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Being part of like those conversations and being able to enact like change in the space and in the industry, like that's
Yeah, actually, dude, I was super pessimistic about management before I decided to take this role, just because I thought, they're never going to listen to anything I have to say. But I've only been doing it a few weeks, and there's a lot of stuff that's changed. I made a pretty cool recommendation today and pointed out a problem that no one knew was a problem, and it turned out to be a problem like hospital wide. And I was pretty blown away that like something that I brought up could impact such a big system. You know what I mean?
Dude, that's sick.
Yeah.
And you got the job because of your fucking gamer chair.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do want to hit on a few things. I've got like a big list here. There's been a ton of shit that's happened. As much as this is just a podcast about, whatever the fuck, there's also like a strong political undertone.
Yeah.
There's a shit ton of stuff that's happened since the last episode. Here's where I want to start. Gender reveal parties. Did you see this one?
Did it start another fire?
Oh my god. No, this one, if I'm not mistaken, let me look up the article, literally killed someone's grandma, which is
get out of here,
which
man.
is not funny at all.
Can you explain how this happened?
It was in October when an Iowa grandmother died because a piece of shrapnel hit her in the head.
Get out of here. I honestly can't even believe that, man. That's like, wow. What a freak accident.
It's not a freak accident.
It's starting to be...
Dude, they're doing it on purpose. People are literally making explosives and setting fires on purpose.
Yeah, but I don't know about the explosive part. Isn't it supposed to just like breathe out like pink or blue smoke? That's the idea.
Okay, here's the problem with gender reveal parties. There's not like some...
Hold I'm not in support of them. I just am like...
For sure, understood.
Like, let me just put it this way. No one gives a fuck what the gender of your kid is going to be.
No one cares.
Like, you're doing that for yourself.
And there are there's not like a website where you buy like blue explosion cake, gender reveal. Like, this isn't something that you buy on Amazon. Like, everyone is...
It's like some like maniac with a chemistry set in their basement, or...
Yeah, and they're like, how can we make it explode and how can we make it blue? Oh,
man.
Like, bro... These people, you killed your grandma.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it might not have been their grandma. It was a grandma.
Oh, dude, I'm too lazy to do the research to figure out whose grandma it was. But California almost doesn't exist, and somebody's grandma is 6 feet under because you needed to have this be some big celebration. So you might have some perspective because you were a father. Did you have a gender reveal party?
Oh yeah, it was huge. No, we did not. No, we didn't. We didn't conceal it from ourselves. We just found out whenever we could via ultrasound, and it really wasn't that exciting.
Yeah,
it was like it's a 50-50 coin toss here. So
wait, so is there like what is the methodology? I'm not a doctor. Between like looking at a fetus and like telling it, like, is it literally like? Do you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a penis?
Yes. Yeah. That's why there's like a range of how many weeks it takes to tell, because they in some fetal development it will be more obvious than others.
Is that like can you tell when you're trying to sex your baby, whether or not your kid's gonna have a big dick? Like, do you like if it's earlier? Do you know like, oh, he's gonna be slung?
I just want you to refrain from using the phrase "sex your baby" ever again, because that's not adequate phrasing for what you're trying to say. So what was your question?
Oh, I mean, listen, the question that I was asking was already wildly inappropriate. But at this point, I think we should just move on.
Okay.
Great. Okay, well, what is the proper phrase for sex your baby? What that seems like the correct verb.
Well, I don't know. I think do you know, I don't know. I don't know what the right way to say that is, but that I would definitely avoid that though. I would definitely avoid that.
There has to be a verb for determining sex, you know?
Yeah, probably determining, right? Is the verb.
Well, that's boring. That's boring. Did you see that picture of Joe Biden with Jimmy Carter and his wife?
No, but Jimmy Carter, I cannot believe he's still alive, man. He looks very old. I mean, he looks really, really old.
Really, really old.
Yo, unpopular opinion, I actually really like Jimmy Carter.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he's like one of the only recent one-term presidents, and he is not super popular because when he was president, like gas prices went through the roof and the Iran-Contra scandal, but I think most of that really wasn't his fault, honestly, and he was way ahead of his time on the environment and stuff.
I don't know a ton about Jimmy Carter. What years was he?
He was talking about like climate change and emissions back in like the late 70s. Wow. It was the late 70s when he was the president.
How old is he?
I think it was 76 to 80 or like 78 to 82. I can't remember.
I thought you were talking about his age. You mean the year?
The year, yeah, 1978.
Yeah, I was about to say, dude, if he was... Oh, wait, he's 96.
Yeah, he's old.
Wow.
Yep.
Wait, how old is Joe Biden?
Like 76, I think.
Yo, shit.
75, 76.
Is Joe Biden the second oldest living president?
No, Bill Clinton might be older.
Bill Clinton is
Bill Clinton's
74.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's bad. That's really bad. That's not good.
Yeah, especially because I hate to be a pessimist, but I don't think that Jimmy Carter is going to make it to the end of this administration.
Yeah, he's an old one.
How old's Bush?
74.
Okay,
bro. Listen. Everybody was questioning Joe's health, but I think that he is going to make it to the end of 4 years. He's like,
I think he's so too.
He has been surprisingly lucid in all of his speeches up to this point,
and not just that, but surprisingly active and effective. I think probably everybody on the left, their big fear was, he's campaigning on certain stuff, but it's lip service, and he's just a centrist who isn't going to do anything. But I mean, we got stimulus done. A lot of people aren't happy because it wasn't 2,000. We can talk about the technicality of 600 plus 1,400 versus whether it was supposed to be 2,000 total. But we got stimulus done, and he's talking about infrastructure spending, $6 trillion. And I'm all for that, man. I've been beating that drum for years now.
Yeah. So I agree, and I disagree.
Okay.
Personally, I think Joe Biden's a piece of but let's talk about that in a second.
Okay. Because of historically what he's done, or something that he's done
Something that he's done as president. And I'm super interested to hear your opinion on this. But before I start beating up on Joe Biden, dude, the current vaccine rollout is really incredible. Like, even in the wake of the New York Times article that just came out stating that it's unlikely that we make it to herd immunity because of vaccine hesitancy, the fact that there is a shot in over 50% of Americans' arms at this point is pretty incredible, right?
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a testament to modern medicine that we were able to develop something safe that fast. And it's like very regionalized. Like, I live in a very small suburban county, and the mega site near me, which is not even the only place that vaccinates people, has vaccinated 267,000 people.
It's incredible.
So, I mean,
yeah, the speed was really incredible. I don't know if you know anything about like the mRNA research that was used to like push this thing out so fast. And also they were using knowledge that they had gained from this is not the first COVID. And the fact that they had like so much information on other coronavirus spreads that had happened, like it's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have epidemiology research at my fingertips or anything like that, but yeah, I do know what you're talking about, that they were researching novel coronavirus mRNA vaccines before this pandemic happened, and which sort of enabled the accelerated nature of the rollout, which is really cool.
That's actually some breaking news from literally today. The White House took a stance on patents. I don't know if you saw that.
No, but before we get to that, can you tell me what you were going to say about Joe Biden?
Okay, so here's the thing that really, it comes from mainly one issue.
Okay.
And that is, so the small thing that he's done so far that's pissed me off is he campaigned on an infrastructure package that was far bigger than what we got. He campaigned on an infrastructure bill of $7.6 trillion, and he proposed one of 2.8.
6.
What was
2.8? I thought it was 6 trillion.
No, 2.
You sure? I really thought this was a $6 trillion bill.
The one that he just brought to the floor?
Yeah, I mean, maybe something's changed since I last looked into this, but I could have swore it was $6 trillion was what we were talking about.
Yeah, it is 2. Yeah, which is not enough.
Yeah.
And that's at the time of its unveiling.
Oh, yeah, dude, this plan that I read's from April 28th, so it must have changed, like, literally in the past week.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So very disappointing to me, because this is like the big problem that I have with the Democratic Party, is that we fight ourselves so hard before we even bring things to the table that, you know, by the time the Republicans whittle down whatever we bring to the table, we're screwed.
And not just Republicans, Joe Manchin.
And Kristen Sinema, dude.
Yeah.
It's really, really discouraging that there's so much infighting in the Democratic Party.
Well, you know, our United States Senate, the way that it's distributed, 50 senators represent 18% of the country.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is with, like, the Midwestern states.
Yeah, it's designed that way.
But it was designed that way with, like, sort of that intent, but now the disparity is way bigger than when they designed it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you have California with 40 million people in it with 2 senators, and then you have, you know, North Dakota with literally like 5 people in it with 2 senators.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, and again, that's a thing that makes sense, you know, in the 1800s, but maybe doesn't.
If it even made sense then.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I agree with it in concept back then.
For sure. It's interesting, there's like a religiosity about the Constitution that is very interesting. But before we get to that, my biggest gripe with Joe Biden is everything that went down regarding the $15 minimum wage that was proposed as an amendment during the budget reconciliation movement.
I remember.
So having a majority in the Senate right now,
You're talking about the filibuster now, right?
I'm actually not going to hit the filibuster, because we don't need the filibuster twice a year. There are 2 times during the year that the Senate requires only 51 seats, and that is as big as our majority is, because we have 50 people, and then we have Vice President Kamala Harris, who can break the vote in the event of a tie.
Yeah.
So there are 2 times a year where you only need 51 votes because of the filibuster, and that is during the 2 budget reconciliations. And when there aren't agreements...
But it was like the reconciliation chair that said that they couldn't vote on it. It wasn't Joe Biden.
Well, that's where the problem lies. It's the Senate parliamentarian who literally has no authority. She's an advisor. And before she had even said anything, Joe Biden led her to the pitch. The way it rolled out.
I didn't know that. I really didn't know that.
Dude, it was really despicable.
This is one of those things where it's like Democrats definitely get hung up in technicalities, and I see why you're frustrated, and I am too, where the Republicans just would have done it and said, fuck you if it's illegal.
They just would have done it, dude.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it wasn't illegal. We were talking about the package, and Joe Biden, before the parliamentarian had ever made a stance, was giving a White House press conference and said, yeah, I don't know about that. I think the parliamentarian might disagree. We'll have to see. And then 2 weeks later, as if a horse was led to water, she came out and disagreed. So the parliamentarian does not have the ability to reach into a bill and pull text in or out of it. That has to be done by the bill crafters, which are the Speaker of the House, Senate Majority Leader, and their committees, right? So in this situation, there are two contexts. So when the parliamentarian disagrees with something, two things have to happen. Either the Republicans bring this to the floor and they say we have to vote on it, and it takes 60 votes to take it out, or the Democrats say we're going to keep it in, and it takes 51 votes to keep it in. And so fucking Chuck Schumer, under no pressure from authority other than himself, yanks this motherfucker out of the bill. And now it's up to Bernie Sanders to pull it back to the floor and say, let's put it back in, and he needs 60 votes instead of 50 because of the filibuster.
Right. On that individual minimum wage as opposed to like a full budget.
Yeah, on that individual amendment.
It's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. Yeah. And it would almost be excusable if this wasn't something that Joe Biden campaigned on. When Bertie gave Joe Biden his endorsement.
So you think he did it intentionally just to make it look like he gave it a shot and actually didn't want it to happen?
I absolutely believe that he didn't want it to happen.
Okay.
I don't think that it's part of the Democratic Party agenda, or they would fight for it. You know what I mean? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely for a $15 minimum wage. So we can start there. Like, I think, if anything, that's probably a little on the low end. And I'm not crazy. Like, I think maybe like 18, 19 would be reasonable. But, 15 is what we can fight for. It's like a talking point. So I'm all on board with that. I think if you only indexed our minimum wage for inflation since 1968, we'd be talking about a $13 minimum wage. And to get the rest of the way, all you have to do is talk about productivity in this country. And wages have stagnated when it comes to productivity. So I'm all for it. I do think that the Democrats have let us down. And I think that every time we do get a minimum wage increase, it happens so incrementally. Not that I think it needs to happen overnight or anything, but it happens so incrementally that we're already behind the eight ball by the time it gets to be an active thing. I mean, here in New Jersey, when Chris Christie was governor, we did a referendum to raise it to $10 an hour. This was back in like 2010. And he couldn't veto it. Like, it was too popular. Yeah. So instead what he did was, it was supposed to phase in over like 4 or 5 years or something like that to get from like $8.25 to $10.10. And what he did was just raise it like 15 cents a year every year he was governor until he left. So it nothing happened. I was like, wait a minute. Because somebody told me, no, minimum wage is still like $8 and something cents an hour. I'm like, how is that possible? We all voted on this referendum. It was overwhelmingly popular. Oh, apparently he had the control to neuter the progression of it. So it's crazy how this kind of stuff happens. And so by the time the $10 an hour actually took effect, like that $10 is worth less than the $8 that it already was when they passed the bill. I mean, we just can't keep up with inflation. We need to index minimum wage so it adjusts automatically inflation, so we don't have to have the same fight every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense, and is actually, it comes to an argument that I hear a ton against the minimum wage increase, is like, this is going to contribute to inflation. This is going to this is going to cause more inflation. Inflation is happening either way. And the minimum wage is not keeping up.
I can speak to that a little bit. Like, it's really not what people think it is either. I mean, this has been studied academically. Like, if you look at a company like McDonald's and talk about the impact of a $15 minimum wage, it's like, okay, you're paying an extra like 23 cents for a Big Mac. I don't think anybody cares about that. Yeah. Like, I'd rather people get paid more. I don't really care about saving 23 cents. I don't know how it's lucrative for McDonald's to like lie about it and campaign against that kind of thing when they can just raise their prices to account for those wage increases.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's incredible how people can have a stance against this, knowing that a minimum wage increase would do so much to combat poverty in America. I think the numbers came out from some studies on this, that a $15 minimum wage would bring 50% of Black American families out of poverty that were currently in poverty. like, holy shit, like, especially understanding the way that the minimum wage and how low it is adversely affects people of color and families of color en masse. Like, it's just hard to look at these kinds of issues when when you understand how it affects people and be like, no, I don't want this,
Yeah. I think that, like, the other argument people use is that it will put small businesses out of business. And I mean, maybe this makes me sound like very cold, but I'm sorry. I think if you can't afford to pay somebody $15 an hour, that, like, maybe your business shouldn't exist. Like, and look, I'm somebody from the Northeast, so maybe I'm missing some context here. I know you're originally from Alabama. Like, do you hold that same sentiment for local businesses in the most poor state in the country? Do you think that that's reasonable?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay.
I'm from Alabama, and I think that even in Alabama, that the breadwinners of the family making, so if you get paid the minimum wage, if a minimum wage of $15 an hour on a 40-hour work week, you make 31 grand a year. It's like something like $31,600. If you're trying to raise a fucking family on $31,000, like, if you don't think that people deserve $31,000, to have a household, I just don't understand. It's not a livable wage for anyone.
Well, the counter argument to that ethical piece, though, would be, can a business survive paying people those wages? Like, so if you have, let's say you're a small business with like 5 employees, right?
Yeah.
And you're raising their wages from like $25,000 to $33,000 a year. So 5 employees, you're talking about 5 times 3, so probably a little over $20,000. How many businesses are in the situation where $20,000 is going to put them under the breaking point?
Yeah, you got to restructure. I'm with
Yeah.
you. If this is a funny thing that hits me about conservatives and just capitalist diehards in general is they're like, oh yeah, only the fit survive. Like, you gotta restructure.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right?
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which literally and physically is an impossible thing to do. Like, I don't think that they understand like how damning that phrase is.
Right.
But and then when you offer something like, hey, you should be paying these people a minimum wage, they're like, oh, all of our businesses are gonna die. Like, you can't do that. Like, no, motherfucker. Like, you adapt, you overcome, and if you don't, then you fail. You're supposed to be the party of like accepting failure. If you can't pay your employees a livable wage, if you can't pay your employees $31,000 a year, then you need to restructure. You need to find something different, or you need to do the work yourself.
And there's a conservative angle on this too, which is, conservatives are very upset about social spending programs, and it's like, okay, well, if you raise people out of poverty through wages that are working, then they won't qualify most likely for things like food stamps and other forms of assistance. Like, so you eliminate spending on that side of it, and inadvertently you don't need that tax revenue for those programs anymore. But that seems to be something they only want to complain about and not actually address.
Yeah.
So
they consistently drive people into poverty, and they consistently drive people out of jobs. And then they complain when people file for unemployment and try to make it as hard as possible. It literally sometimes just seems like they want poor people to die. Like, that, that is like the angle that I get sometimes is just like, oh yeah, poor people should just be dead. Like, go die, stupid.
Well, I mean, meritocracy is like an interesting concept in itself. Like, I try and like put myself in the shoes of how conservatives thinking about this, and it's like, okay, so you're saying like if people don't have the aptitude or intelligence to succeed, then they deserve to be poor. But like, I don't know, from a philosophical standpoint, I'm like, you don't choose your level of intelligence. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if somebody with an IQ of 70 is working and contributing to society, then I don't see why they shouldn't make a wage that is like at least possible to support themselves on.
Yeah. Or a family,
Yeah.
In the most extreme case, my God. What's funny is all of the guys that have this meritocracy kind of standpoint, of like, I worked hard for my wealth, you should too. If you just work harder, you get the money. Like, all of these motherfuckers that exist in the political world, like, went to college at Yale. And if you got your undergrad at Yale, I promise you, you didn't work. for the money that you had. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if you're
Yeah.
in a situation when before you've made your career, your parents can fucking bankroll however many $100,000 college education for you at the most prestigious university in the country, then you didn't work for your shit. Sorry, sweaty.
And even if you did, it's not proportional.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you want to talk about like some of the most successful rich people in the world, like, okay, Elon Musk, he's an incredibly smart guy. I'm sure he contributes a lot to society, of value, but he's not 40,000 times more valuable than the average person. I mean, you're not working hundreds of thousands of times harder than anybody else. It's just not humanly possible.
Yeah.
You can tell me, okay, this person works 10 times harder. This person works 20 times harder. Maybe some of the most exceptional people on the planet work 100 to 200 times harder and are like that much smarter, but hundreds of thousands of times smarter, tens of thousands of times smarter. I mean, my personal opinion, and this used to be the standard in America and is sort of the standard worldwide, is like if you're a CEO of a company, I think it is unethical for you to make any more than 30 times your average employee's wage. There is some countries where the average is even lower than that. If you had to take a guess, how much do you think the average CEO in America makes to their average worker of the company that they own?
Is it more than 30,000 times? Because if it is,
no, it's not that. Like those are extreme cases.
Okay,
it's 475 to 1.
Wow, that's really shitty.
Yeah.
That's
that's insane. I mean, it's just not ethical. I mean, you're talking about so many companies. It's like I don't know how you can live with yourself. I really don't.
Well, the thing that sucks, is that on paper, a ton of them aren't. Like I think Jeff Bezos, his salary from Amazon is like 70 grand.
Yeah, it's all stock.
Yeah, it's all stock and all of these other firmed assets. But just because you have an accountant that can make you look like you're non-liquidatable doesn't mean that, you don't have like 17 private jets and you know what I mean? Like just because your assets aren't liquid does not mean that that you're not that much wealthier. Like Jeff Bezos doesn't make 70 grand. That's like an unrealistic view of the situation. But on paper, it's his salary.
Yeah, that's his salary. But it's all like stock options because he owns majority of the company still, I think. And I think the fucked up thing is like as the company's expanding, how he made most of his wealth, Elon Musk, the same thing, is like to take his personal wealth and then buy back even more of his own stock.
Yeah.
And then the stock keeps going up and it's like, I don't know, it just never ends, pretty much.
Dude, there's this big discussion right now about whether billionaires should be allowed to exist. Because the concept of $1 billion.
Just want to clarify, he's not advocating for killing them, just that they shouldn't have that much money.
No. No, I don't want to like chainsaw murder Jeff Bezos. But what kind of inequity and injustice do we have to live in where people can have food insecurity while others, own literally billions of dollars? Like
more than some countries.
Yeah,
I think the rate he's growing at too, he'll be a trillionaire if something doesn't change.
Yeah.
It's problematic.
It's very problematic.
But you know what the problem with a lot of this discussion is? I think if we could quantify this in simpler terms so that people can understand what we're talking about, they'd be more angry about it. But it's like, I work with people and like these are intelligent people, like that. These are people who went to school and stuff like that. And it's like, I had a discussion with one of my colleagues when Jeff Bezos hit $100 billion for the first time. And I was like kind of fuming about it, And they're like, oh, I don't begrudge him. He worked really hard for his money. I'm like, you don't know what the hell you're saying. Like, do you work hard for your money? Where's your $100 billion? Like this is not a normal amount of money for one person to have, and he should give it back.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, this is the other problem. It's like messaging with a liberal agenda, man, because I would love to be able to do like AOC's plan of if you make more than $10 million a year, you should pay 70%. I really don't think that is outrageous. I think that's pretty conservative because what people don't understand is they think, so if you make $10 million a year, that then you have to pay $7 million. No. That's not how it works. It means if you make $10,001, you pay 70 cents on that last $1. That's it. Like anything above $10 million, it's marginal. But this is like, it's too complicated to get messaging to people. It's hard. Yeah. They really think that the government's coming to take a majority. And it's not like there's not historical precedent for it. If you go back to the 1950s, there was under Republican Dwight Eisenhower a 91% top tax rate.
Yeah.
And no one cared because they didn't, I mean, people cared, like rich people cared, but like it wasn't like a talking point for like the average person to be upset about.
Yeah. And now I don't think people know now that our corporate tax rate is 25%. And maybe people would scoff at that, but it was like 35% at the beginning of Donald Trump and even higher at the beginning of Bush. You know, we've literally just like the same
and
people.
That doesn't even tell the whole story because I mean, most of the mega corporations like Apple pay nothing. $0. That's
and so the same people that are lobbying for you to not be able to take out unemployment are the people that are lobbying against you getting a $2,000 check because of how much it will cost the country, are the same people that are lobbying for the wealthiest people in this country to have to pay less taxes. And the impact of that on our national debt compared to the impact of $2,000 checks for working class people that have lost their jobs in the pandemic, it's so much greater. The impact of tax cuts.
The lost revenue.
Yeah, the lost revenue. It's it's just fucking scummy and it's so telegraphed, but people don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I think that like capital gains is like another big place, like similar to the corporate tax rate. It's like 15%. And that's a little bit of a misnomer too, because you're literally telling people like, if you invest money, we're going to tax you at a lower rate than if you work for it.
Yeah.
I know like the arguments for is like, well, they've already been taxed on the money, you know, but it's like not really though, because we're talking about the profit, not like the money that you're investing, the profit that you make out of it. So it's not a good enough answer for me personally. I think that is severely backwards.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of different types of taxes, which most people don't know about. I'm super new to this game. I'm just getting into like studying economics, but understanding the difference between like value-added taxes and like taxes on transactions. And taxes on wealth.
FTT, financial transaction taxes, would be one of the best ways for us to fund like a major spending program. I think that's how Bernie Sanders wanted to fund tuition-free college.
Yeah, but all of these, like when you say something like raising taxes, it's way more complex than people realize because
they think it's coming out of their pocket.
Yeah, it can either, depending on the type of tax, you can actually prevent with FTT taxes the value being passed on to the consumer in the same way that it gets passed on to the consumer with value-added taxes. Because you're not taxing a product, you're taxing transaction.
Yeah, which most Americans don't engage in. It's just that there's so many transactions by a small number of people that it would generate a lot of revenue. Yeah. And there's a theory that it would minimize the number into like bigger transactions instead of like smaller transactions, and it might stabilize the market more too.
Yeah, it's a complicated mess, dude.
It's definitely complicated, but we got to figure out a way to like message this to people that isn't confusing or condescending. If you start to get into the weeds about this stuff, the problem is like it just becomes this nature of false equivalency where it's like, okay, so the Republicans are trying to screw me and the Democrats are also trying to screw me and it's all the same, so who cares about anything anyway? And it's not exactly quite that clear. Like the Republicans are openly trying to screw you, right? And everything about their policy positions say that. And the Democrats, it's like a split of people who are secretly trying to screw you and people who are honestly trying to do the hard work to get things done correctly, but that doesn't happen all that often.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would definitely tend to lean into that camp, and I don't think it's to say, well, they're corrupt on both sides anyway is an accurate like portrayal of what's going on.
Yeah, that's dangerous rhetoric. Unfortunately, because that kind of messaging of helplessness like doesn't help us get anywhere, which we've tried. The messaging is a huge thing because here's the thing: as important as talking about tax rates and economic inequality is on the ground, people don't give a fuck. Everybody votes on aesthetics on the ground. The majority of Americans vote on aesthetics.
Family tradition.
Yeah, we're talking about family tradition. We literally, at this moment in time, have... I was talking about this with a friend the other day. We were talking about Obama, and I was like talking about how scummy I thought Obama was because he, because
of his drone policy.
Yeah, because of his drone policy. The single thing that he has total control of, being commander-in-chief of the military, he carries out more drone strikes than any other
and
president.
His immigration policy.
Yeah, and his immigration. Yeah, it's like, come on, like let's not praise Obama. He has this podcast with Bruce Springsteen that everyone's going on about right now, and it's like, shut the fuck up. Anyway, The point here being, I was like having this conversation about, how much I didn't really care for Obama, and my friend was like, yeah, but he got gay marriage through, and we have these. We're working with parties of aesthetic considerations. So we have the Republican Party that is like, hey, we don't want to kill babies, and we love God. Vote for this. And everyone's voting against their self-interest. Poor Southern Americans who would benefit greatly from wage increases. And wealth redistribution are voting against their self-interest. And then we have people in the Democratic Party that care only about the marketing campaign.
Social issues.
Yeah, the social issues of the DNC. Because of their lack of scope, they are voting just down ticket blue instead of looking at, like maybe leftist politicians that have more promising economic policy. Voting down ticket blue because your politicians don't think that gay people are from Satan is a very low bar to be voting on.
Well, I'm going to push back against what you're saying a little bit because I think the higher office you go, the more reasonable it is to vote blue generically, and the more local the office is, the more reasonable it is to vote third party or like more progressive and green, because I really do believe, and maybe you disagree with me about this, but I think that voting third party on like the presidency is a complete waste of your vote. I really do. Unfortunately, if we had ranked choice voting, then it would be great. But we don't. So I don't see a possibility of a third party winning, and therefore I think preventing a Republican from getting into office is more important to me for something like that.
I hear you, and I'm with you, and not at the same time.
I know you want to vote your conscience, but I really see this from a pragmatic point of view.
Yeah, but at what point are we consenting to this ever continuing, like, we're all voting for the same party, right? Like the Republicans, the Democrats, it doesn't matter. We're voting for the same agenda at this point. And at what point do we have to finally withhold our vote to like be listened to? It sucks.
Well, I think you saw it in 2016. A lot of people withheld their vote, and Trump won because of it, because it was record low voter turnout.
Yeah.
And I don't think that did us any good.
It didn't. I don't think
it's not like we got like some super progressive as a nominee because of that in 2020. We got Joe Biden, another centrist.
I mean, I don't think that that's our fault. I think it's Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's fault for not being able to see that their immobility to, listen to more progressive American politics has ended them.
It's actually kind of funny that we're on opposite sides of this issue, because being from Alabama, I would have thought maybe the few Democrats that you did know would be like sort of center left Democrats that would never vote for somebody like Bernie Sanders, right?
Yeah.
But for me, the weird thing is all the Democrats that I know and politically engaged people were Bernie Sanders supporters in 2016, including myself, and I didn't know a single person who voted for Hillary, and she won my state primary. So like that is the challenge we're up against, and that is why I'm really like I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I can't sit by and let Donald Trump's and Marjorie Taylor Greene's win elections all over the country. I really would rather take the lesser of two evils, because it's a lot fucking less evil.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a big, complicated, stupid thing. I agree that Joe Biden is, from at least a military and aesthetic consideration, 1,000 times better than Donald Trump. I think that our foreign policy is going to benefit greatly, and I feel that our respectability as a country.
Well, economically too. I mean, maybe he didn't get minimum wage through, but like, I don't think we'd be talking about infrastructure spending at all under Trump. I know he campaigned on it, but he never did anything.
I hear you, and the positives are there. It's just frustrating that what we fought for has been, like, what Joe Biden is pushing through and pushing for is so small compared to what he campaigned on. And I'm just fucking tired of being lied to. I'm just fed up.
I feel like I've gotten to the point where, like, I've definitely gone through that same frustration on almost every issue and, like, beat my head against a wall trying to, like, get the message out about different issues as they come up. And now I'm just happy with, like, literally any small victory that comes along, like, there really is, the only way to change things is incrementally. I've never seen any massive sweeping changes in my lifetime.
Dude, I hear you, and that's fine for me, and it's fine for you. Like, we're going to make it. But there's so many fucking families in this country.
I'm not unempathetic to that.
Yeah.
But what's the alternative? Pushing them back even further and making life even worse for them? Because that's what'll happen in a Republican administration.
Yeah, well, this is like our debate about the minimum wage. Like, we're pushing for 15, and then, like Joe Manchin and Sinema are like, yeah, we could maybe get on board for 10. And then you make this small incremental change that is like, hey, yeah, this is a positive, and this is going to help some people. Of course, we should be on board. But then it fucks us in the long run because it's like, yeah, we did this. And so now we have to wait like another 40 years.
I really think the alternative is that we'd be sitting at 725 for another decade.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm not saying that I'm in support of that. I'm saying that I'm very conflicted on this, but part of me thinks that, heading towards dystopia is maybe better in the long run, because this kind of incremental change is just like spreading the gap of inequality further than it's ever been.
Can you give me a historical example of when that's ever happened where the country in question has turned out better in the long run and not just completely dismantled? Because I think what you're saying is nice in like a hypothetical sense, and I felt that same frustration in 2016, really, when Bernie lost the primary, before I even got to vote for him, by the way, because my state votes fucking last, and I never get to participate in the primaries. I mean, I can, but it doesn't mean anything because it's over by the time it gets to me. It was very frustrating because I put a lot of like time and effort and enthusiasm into it, and I definitely feel you. It was like, okay, screw it, like what even matters anymore? Like enough half measures, but after 4 years of Trump, man, half measures are better than like 5 steps back.
Yeah.
I don't think that was leading anywhere good. I think that it was leading to civil war. I don't think that that's worth any cost.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and unfortunately, I think I have to agree with you on the presidential side. Voting for president maybe is where I draw my personal line. I think you just gotta vote for the better of two evils, and that's where I sit. I would never shame anyone else for voting their conscience. You got to do what you got to do. I think that the Senate and the House of Representatives is where I undraw that line.
That's fine. I mean, senators have won, third-party senators, independent senators, Bernie Sanders, Angus King, and so that is possible. They do have to be very popular in their state, though.
They do. I mean, we're talking about the people that are like drafting legislation, the people that are working on the committees that, determine our spending twice a year. There's like a ton of real power there, and the metrics are small and local enough to where you can cause sweeping change with, especially a Senate election. By getting a progressive in the Senate. If Bernie Sanders had even one other progressive, with him in the Senate, it would really help. We have 6 in the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, they're not doing a very good job of using their power. they recently had the ability to, block Nancy Pelosi's appointment as Speaker of the House in exchange for a number of progressive causes, and they chose not to act on that power, which sucks. Because, like you said earlier, Republicans are nasty enough to say, like, we're going to do whatever it takes.
Ruthless, man.
They're ruthless.
For real, yeah.
They're literally...
I mean, like when Mitch McConnell just, refused to vote on the Supreme Court nominee.
Yeah.
Unprecedented. And they were like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Apparently nothing.
So here's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that our registered Democrat politicians in Congress are controlled by corporations in a way that causes them to breed so much inaction? Do you think that they never meant the things that they said in the first place? Or do you think that they're so unused to having power that they don't know how to use it when they get it? Like, why do you think that we, in the wake of every great Democratic victory in this country, as far as elections goes,
squander the opportunity?
Why does that happen?
Well, as far as the corporate interests, that's a big part of it. And I would say this goes to the Supreme Court decision of Citizens United when they decided that money is speech and that unlimited campaign contributions were fine and anonymous campaign contributions were fine. I think not only do we need to undo that, but even what we had before wasn't great, and we should just go to totally publicly funded elections. So, like, taxpayer funded, everybody gets the same amount of money. That's it. So that's part of it. But that's not really a strategic thing. And I don't want to say like everybody's being disingenuous. I think there is like people out there who campaign on things and then they really just can't get it done. They really have every intention of doing it. There is senators and congressmen, congresswomen's like that. I don't.
Congresswomen X, Womex.
Yeah, women X. Yeah, but so I think it's multifactorial, and I also just think, in general, that we are sort of victims of our own ethics.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, I think that Democrats are willing to stand on principle and say, like, we hold ourselves to a higher standard, they go low, we go high type thing. And it's like, it's not working. They're winning. Like, I'm sorry, I get it. But what did we do when they appointed 3 Supreme Court justices? We did nothing. We just let it happen. We, like, a few senators asked some pointed questions. Wow. I mean, we didn't do anything to try and stop it or hold any, like we're not fighting fire with fire. And it's like a weird kind of self-righteousness that we think that people will see us as morally superior, but it just doesn't work out that way. It really doesn't work out that way. And unfortunately, I think we have to change our strategy. And I think that we have to play dirty.
Yeah, agreed, man. I think that food insecurity in the richest nation in the history of the world deserves some fiery tactics if that's what it takes to eradicate such a thing. It's just not okay.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development estimates that it would cost about $20 billion to end homelessness. Yeah. That's nothing.
Not $20 billion a year.
No, yeah, $20 billion
once.
Yeah. Yeah. $20 billion. I mean, Jeff Bezos could fund that out of his pocket.
Yeah.
With 10% of his income. I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And look, I know it's more complicated than that. I'm oversimplifying it. That is like a monetary amount. There's a mental illness component where like some people would continue to be homeless even if the options were available. These are all things that are true. But I don't think that means we should just do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not worth not trying. It's definitely not worth the way that we currently use our budget in this country so irresponsibly, so often in the interests of the powerful instead of the interests of the betterment of the people.
On the double standard question that you brought up, here's an interesting like paradox to think about. Al Franken, right? Al Franken.
I miss that motherfucker.
Yeah, dude, he was great. He was great on policy. He was a funny guy, and his career was ruined because he made a mistake. I mean, look, he posed. If you guys are unfamiliar with the story, it was like a year and a half ago or so. He posed in front of this drunk, unconscious woman, groping her boobs, and it's unclear if he was actually touching her boobs. It looks like he may have just been like posing for the picture because he's looking right at the camera and maybe not touching her, but sort of making the joke that he's touching her. And basically, Democrats crucified him for it. That he had to resign.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because at the same time that was happening, Republicans were running a pedophile in Alabama.
Yeah.
And he only lost his election by like 1%. Like, that's how much people from Alabama hate Democrats. And that guy, Doug, whatever, that was the Democrat, I mean, he's already lost re-election, so.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. And that, I think, man, that's something I do want to have. I've talked about it so much on this show already, but on the subject of cancel culture, I listened to this opinion piece on it the other day, talking about how cancel culture being a purely insider kind of act, like it's the left crucifying the left, just like looking at some metrics as far as like how that has affected us and the country over the past few years, and that I'd love to get to dive into sometime. But it's Cinco.
I have one other question for you about that. Do you think Andrew Cuomo survives his scandal going on right now?
Okay, I have such mixed feelings about Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's an old guard, dirty fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm always super, super, super forgiving of people, and I'm super, super skeptical of things that circulate on Twitter via text. But when there's like really damning video evidence out there, it's like, oh,
so, I'm almost going to contradict everything I just said and say I think he should resign.
Yeah.
I really do. But I think the Gavin Newsom recall in California is stupid. So there's like both ends of the spectrum going on.
Yeah, for sure. I think, dude, that Cuomo needs to get out as fast as possible. But the thing that always scares me is that, Cuomo, for all of his faults, with all of his fuck-ups, he screwed the pooch on some decisions he made early in COVID about nursing homes. We all know about that. Mm-hmm. He did some great things pushing for, unemployment access, especially for gig workers in the state of New York at the start of the pandemic. It's like, fuck, we need a replacement that is going to do better and not worse,
Yeah.
So I really, really, really wish that we could center some of these conversations around like, who are we going to put into that position when they're gone? What happens when Andrew Cuomo resigns? How many people who are posting like #ResignCuomo on Twitter know the intermediate governor? Like, who knows the answer to that question? And if you don't know the answer to that question,
is it worth the risk?
It's like an irresponsible thing to just tweet. So I hear you, but we've got to figure some shit out first.
So you think he should stay in the meantime? Then is your answer? I'm trying to parse. Like, that was a lot of caveats and not an answer, but you don't know. It's fine if you don't know. That's an answer too.
Dude, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not educated enough.
Honestly, I'm not really saying like from a strategic standpoint or anything like that. I'm just saying there's a lot of quid pro quo that seem to be going on. It seems very corrupt. I just think he should get out. Like, it's a bad look. It's not just like, it's not really something I can defend. It's not like, he made a mistake. Nah, there's like a pattern of behavior there. It's not like a one-off thing. I don't know.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I would never defend Andrew Cuomo.
Right.
I just don't know if I can put my support towards a movement for an action with grave consequences with no alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in a state that, most people don't think of New York as, divided.
It is,
but
though.
The state of New York is very, New York City is like a liberal haven, but then the
New
rest
York
of
City
New York
is pretty divided over their own mayor, though. I don't think any mayor has ever been like overwhelmingly popular. It's always like 50% hate him, 50% love him type thing.
Yeah, 50% of people loved Bill de Blasio. What the fuck?
And Rudy Giuliani.
Jeez. Yeah, it's a complicated thing. And now people are loving on Andrew Yang, and, that's its whole other thing.
I guess we're just going to leave it there. I can't get into like a whole thing about Andrew Yang.
Okay, let's say one thing about Andrew Yang. Do you follow his Twitter?
No, I don't.
Dude, this guy. is so fucking funny. Bro, he's trying so hard to be a New Yorker. Every day he posts at least 3 tweets that are like pictures of him on the subway, and he's like, on the A train heading to the Bronx, you know? And it's like,
I mean, that's not
it's
untypical for politicians. Like Bernie Sanders always used to get pictures of himself flying coach and stuff like that. I'm an everyday man.
I'm an everyday man. You
Yeah.
know? I mean, there's a difference between getting a picture of you flying coach, though, and like getting a cell phone video of you in a supermarket that you don't know how to navigate and being like, this is a bodega. Bodegas are good for the city. I'm a bodega man. I really love to to buy bananas from the bodega. Dude.
I'm sure some people eat that kind of thing up, though.
Yeah, this is me reminding me in post to play a clip of Andrew Yang in a bodega.
New York City relies upon its 14,000 bodegas so much. I love bodegas, and we got to make sure that they continue to stay open and do their thing. New York City, support your local bodegas. Can you imagine a New York City without bodegas? I can't imagine it. Let's not have to.
Is that an actual clip, or you just like are epitomizing him?
Oh no.
Oh
no, it's a clip.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
bro.
Oh, dude, I wanted to tell you. Did you listen to that podcast about the police and jujitsu that I sent you?
No, I didn't.
Oh man, I wanted to tell you about this, but it's kind of a big can of worms. I'll just give you a teaser, and then maybe we can talk about it next time.
Here, yeah. Will you come on next week?
Yeah.
Okay, give us a teaser.
All right. So, what if I told you that the national average for a police officer in arrest and control techniques in the United States of America, this is like hand-to-hand takedown maneuvers and grappling, the average amount of training an officer receives is 4 hours every 2 years.
Oh. Yeah. I would be not shocked, but also mortified.
Yeah. So we will get back to that because I think that there's a
Great.
lot to unpack there, and there's actually some applicability to specific New York legislation that I want to get into.
Beautiful. Well, I can't wait to talk about that. Next time, I also want to talk about the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft, which is a group of people that I just found out about. I didn't know until about a month ago that TERFs existed, and they're maybe some of the most hilariously mock-worthy people that I've ever met my entire life. So anyway,
You've actually met one.
What?
Did you actually meet one?
No.
Oh, okay. You said met in your life, so
Oh, no.
that would have been an interesting story.
Yeah, that would have been. Maybe we'll find one.
We bring him on. That's a terrible idea. We're not doing that.
Can we find? Okay, if you're listening to this podcast and you belong to the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft, please reach out. Our email is x@kellon.co. That's x@kellon.co. Thank you, Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft. Well, I think that's our time for this week. Vince, thank you so much for coming on, man.
No problem, dude. That was awesome.
That was fun as fuck. And cue music.